It's so shiny. It was like taking the freaking ring to the volcano and dumping it in, and then having to crawl into the volcano, find the ring, and then throw it in one more time. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Nick. In this video, I'm going to show you how I built and put together Aragorn's sword from Lord of the Rings. Andrea, look how shiny this is. It's so... Alright, so this one I definitely had an adventure putting this one together. I've never built a sword like this type of sword before. Obviously, I did like the keyblade. I did both keyblades before, but that's a totally different sort of situation. This was a totally 3D printed sword that I then had to figure out how to look metallic. I went through a couple of different techniques on figuring out how to do it, but let's go back and I'll show you how I put together this sword. To start off, I totally forgot to show you guys all the pieces that I had for this prop, but it basically came in a handful of parts. It came in a pommel, the handle, 2 pieces for the hilt, 5 to 6 pieces for the blade. I did break it right in the beginning here, so you can see that I have 2 dowels that are going into it to help attach it securely, but for the most of the blade into the pommel, it is a 1/4 inch dowel that goes all the way through the entire piece. Give it more sturdiness and more rigidity. I'm just adding a bunch of glue to it to glue it together right now, making sure it's one piece before I go forward to start all the sanding. All right, so there's a lot of sanding to do with this. I have to get it from a whole lot of layer lines to super smooth, or as smooth as I possibly can get it. So I'm starting out with a 60 or 80 grit sandpaper to get a lot of those layer lines down, and I'll work my way up through the sandpapers as I go forward. So I'm starting with a 60 there, and I'm gonna continue going until I get it a lot higher than that, a whole lot higher than that. After I finished sanding, I added some spot putty to this. This is a kind of wood filler by Dex that starts pink and dries white, so you know when it's dry. It's really nice and handy. So with the sanding process, I got all the way up to 220. I'm now wet sanding, so I'm going to use somewhere between 320 and 600 for the wet sanding. Wet sanding, if you haven't done that before, it's a really great way to get a really smooth surface. And I'm just adding some spot putty to that to make sure I fill any of the extra holes that I found while I was doing the sanding. I went ahead and primed it with a gray primer from Rust-Oleum, and now I'm going to put some gloss black on there, a nice solid thick coat of that. I'm hoping it's going to be a super shiny, very shiny sword. So for my local hardware store, I'm using some mirror silver. It's working out pretty good as I start this up, but my issue is that every time I try to clear coat this stuff, it never works. It always turns out more matte finish. So what I'm doing right here is I'm using a 2K clear gloss airbrush clear coat, hoping that I'm going to be able to get a better clear coat than just using a spray rattle can. For this, it did not work out the way I was hoping it would, so I had to figure out another way to do it. Alright, so we're finally getting to the handle and the pommel and the hilt. For the handle, I just painted it with Plastidip, with black Plastidip. It worked out great. With the pommel, I'm spraying it with a black gloss coat. Same thing with the hilt. Black gloss coat on top of a gray primer. All the sanding, all the prep I did to the blade, I also gave to the hilt and the pommel. I'm finally trying to attach the blade and the hilt. I feel like I'm at a point where I can do that. So I'm simply just gluing it together. I'm getting everything onto that dowel and gluing it right together with some CA glue. Holding it real tight. I don't want to spray any accelerator on this because oh, I do anyway. There you go. And apparently it didn't mess up the paint job. I was worried that it would, but it doesn't. And we're going to put on the handle. I'm going to put some glue on that dowel, and we're going to go ahead and try to put the handle on. Last but not least, we put the pommel section on. It's all good. It's all good, right? It's fine. Oh, I broke it. I broke it. I broke the pommel. So now I got to put it back together. Yeah, it's broken. Yeah, it totally snapped. It didn't fall completely off. It was just nearly headless. Simply just glued it back together. It was a pretty clean break, so I was able to get it together without too much fuss. After doing all of that work for the past like 2 weeks, I decided to go in a different direction. The look that I was getting with the spray rattle cans and the mirror chrome and the silver and all that stuff, it wasn't really looking what I was hoping it to look like from the beginning. So I decided to do some research, look at different techniques to make a silver metallic sword-like object, and I found some other ideas. So I decided to strip down the sword, take it back down to the PLA, strip down the paint,
for everything that I put on there in the past couple of weeks and completely smooth out the sword once more. Now, I did find some Bondo spot putty. That is the best stuff I've ever used in my life. If you haven't used it, definitely use it. I've always known about this stuff, but I didn't know where to find it. I finally found it at an auto parts store, kind of randomly, and I picked it up and I took it home, stripped down the whole thing. I did go back to the sanding process. I went from low grits to all the way to wet sanding with high grits to make sure that the whole thing was nice and smooth. But I used that spot putty to make sure that I filled in all those hairline fractures that wood filler does not even have the ability to get close to filling. Definitely use that if you want to get those tiny little cracks that seem impossible to get filled with wood filler. This entire process of stripping down this sword though did take a couple of days. It took like an extra couple of days, almost a week, to just strip down the entire sword. Do think about that if you want to change your direction you want to go with your process. Once I got it all done and good to go, I decided to go with a gloss white instead of a gloss black, because the direction I'm going to go with, the gloss black will give it more of a darker tone, the gloss white will give it more of a brighter tone. And with the hilt and the pommel, I'm going to go back and paint it with a gloss black again. This is the process I decided to go with. I really like how this ended up looking in the end. All it is basically you just add graphite powder to your painted print. So graphite powder, I'm using I think a 4 to 7 micron powder, so it's super fine. I had to find this particular jar online. I will leave the link for that down below, but then also you can find it on Amazon as well. Doesn't seem to be a difference in what kind of graphite powder you get. Make sure when you apply this, you apply it consistently and evenly. I use makeup sponges. Some people use cotton swabs, but makeup sponges you can reuse, so it's a little bit easier, costs a little bit less. What you do is you put it on with one sponge everywhere, and then you go back over with a clean sponge and you buff the entire piece. Now this ended up looking really great. The white gloss ended up giving it sort of more of a lighter shine to it, and the dark black gloss gave it a darker sort of gunmetal sort of look to it. In the end, it all looked metal, and I was really happy about it. This graphite also doesn't have to be clear coated. You basically put it on and let it sit, and it'll stay there. It won't come off, and it looks really great in the end result.
I'll be honest, I don't think this is the most perfect version of this sword that I could build, but it was the first sword that I've done. You could say that I've left my comfort zone. I am mostly happy with it. I'm like 98% happy with it. There's a couple of things that I messed up right at the very end there that I wasn't really willing to go back and fix. So I didn't. To fix them, I would have to redo the entire thing. I definitely do want to make more swords in the future. I think that'd be a lot of fun. What I love about the graphite is super convincing. This is insane how shiny this is. I have not clear coated this. I have not put any sort of protectional barrier on this sword. You see my hands? And no graphite on these hands, right? Look at this. I'm rubbing this thing so nicely, and there is no graphite on my hands. Isn't that crazy? I love this. I love this. You don't have to clear coat it. You just leave it how it is, and it's fantastic. And what's nice is that it doesn't have some weird residuey layer on top of it. It really feels like that's just it. Like you're touching what it is, possibly metal or steel. And the same thing with the hilt and the pommel. It just looks like that's the actual color of the material that you're holding. That's what I love about this stuff. That's why I love using the graphite. Now, the graphite powder I had to get online. I could not find it at any stores, and I like that I use Plastidip. I have like a bunch of Plastidip for some reason. So I use Plastidip for the handle, so it looks a little bit more, it looks less like paint and more like, I won't say it looks like it's leather, but it definitely looks better than paint. I painted the hilt and the pommel with a gloss black, and then I put graphite on top of it. There is definitely a slight, very hard to tell sort of difference between the gloss white and the gloss black. In person, just a hair different. It's just enough to show that like it is two different pieces of metal. I have done no weathering to this yet because I don't really know yet how the weathering will be affecting the graphite. If you're gonna do weathering, you should do it before you put the graphite on, but then I don't know if the graphite will change the weathering process. I'm not sure. I'll do that with another sword, probably another project in the future, and I'll figure that out when I get there. But this was a blast to put together. I want to do another one. I want to do more swords. I think it would just be cool to have more of these things. Again, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, smash the like button down there and push that subscribe button so you can see when I put out new videos. And I'm looking forward to doing more of these things. I'm going to start on another one immediately right after I finish this video. So I'll see you guys real soon. Thanks so much. Bye. It is so freaking hot in this garage. Someone please donate an air conditioner. That'd be great.